in the session, a lot of promises were made. We have a devastating emergency in our state. We are 51 out of the 50 states per capita for police on our streets. And what has resulted from that is a devastating crime wave across our state and communities everywhere. We, Mr. Speaker, have to do a lot more for our police and our first responders. And what this amendment does is it strikes at the overbloated bureaucracy in our higher education system in order to keep the promise that many, including myself and including our new governor, Governor Ferguson, have made to try to make sure that we're not 51 out of 50, but that we start moving our way into a better direction to have more police on the streets per capita in our communities. Now, Mr. Speaker, one of the problems with House Bill 2015 that was recently passed and is assumed in the underlying budget and in the striker is that it essentially asks communities across and cities and counties across our state to raise a regressive sales tax in order for the benefit of public safety in their communities. Now, Mr. Speaker, we rail all the time against regressive taxes, including our sales tax, but yet the underlying bill assumes public safety funding for police officers, by the way, at a much lower level than $100 million. We're talking $25 million. And we ask communities, if they haven't already, to raise a regressive tax onto some of our rural communities and poor communities that simply cannot afford the extra burden in a state that is already massively unaffordable. And even if, Mr. Speaker, we efficiently spent every single dime of that $25 million in the underlying budget to hire police, we wouldn't even move from 51 to 50. I think that is a devastating problem. It fails to keep up with some of the promises that were made about getting more police officers on our street. And to be clear, Mr. Speaker, it's not just about money, although that is funding for our police is critically important, but it's also the respect for the profession itself. And that's why this amendment comes with another promise, Homes for Heroes. Trying to get assistance to our very valuable first responders, firefighters, law enforcement, nurses, you name it, those people who sacrifice it all and go onto the front lines, whether it be an emergency, a fire, a crime that is occurring, or even on the front lines of our public health emergencies to help all of us out. And sometimes they don't get the deepest amount of respect in some communities in Washington. I would very much like to increase the amount that the state of Washington respects those professions by making sure in this amendment that we clear a problem where we have increased the administration and faculty in our higher education upwards of 52% over the last couple decades, while student enrollment has plummeted. We are spending an incredible amount of money in our higher ed system, and we have seen the lowest college going rate, one of the lowest college going rates in the nation, but some of the most generous college financial aid of any state in the nation. Something is devastatingly wrong where we're sending a bunch of state dollars to make sure that we have an over-bloated administration. We don't need an assistant dean to the assistant dean to the dean and having that dean has 5 IT people and 6 administrators per one student. There's one college, Mr. Speaker, in our state that is literally 4 staff per one student. Can you imagine? Per one student, you need 4 staff, and that particular school has seen devastating enrollment numbers, so much so that they're trying to stick out the carrot for kids in different communities that have basically a 2.0 average just to entice them into their school. So we're saying that this is a values proposition. We can change the over-bloated administration and bureaucracy in some of our higher education institutions, and we can actually begin to solve a problem by trying to start funding police, and not in such a way that raises regressive sales taxes, but in a way, and by the way, House Bill 2015, the one that asked you to raise your sales taxes. Even if they did all this, with the $25 million, which is pretty much nothing at the end of the day, most communities and cities in our state would not even be able to, once they checked all the boxes, they wouldn't be able to hire one single police officer. That's not enough, Mr. Speaker. But we can solve a problem with over-bloated bureaucracy and have more efficient government and start to drive at the problem. We got some of the highest crime rates in the state, or in the nation. Larceny theft, property theft, #1 in the nation for retail crime, with billions of dollars of products flying off of our shelves. Now, Mr. Speaker, the only thing that has really been solved in our public safety crisis lately was the stolen vehicles have went down. And why is that? Because we passed an initiative to allow police to pursue criminals once again. And so at the end of the day, not only do we want to fund and try to recruit and retain more police officers in our state, but to value our promise of at least $100 million or more, which we can absolutely do by cutting down on our bloated administration in our colleges. But also we want to show some respect for those professions, and not just police, but others as well, that are first-line responders. And we can do that by helping them obtain the American dream, Mr. Speaker, of owning their own home. Please vote yes.